Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Gene Barr had a schedule conflict the last time we did the business panel, but imagine this, Russian energy, Pennsylvania. But first, we have a couple of the state's leading reporters, abortion, gun control, and who knows, maybe a little Mark Zuckerberg, and we'll do all that after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, sitting across from me, as often is the case, is John Micek. He's the editorial page editor of the Harrisburg Patriot News PennLive. I joke with him and say he will always be a reporter no matter how high he goes in the editorial page. How do I put that, John? Command structure of your paper? Why not? Whatever, but he's a reporter. And Angela Couloumbis, she's also on the program a lot with the Philadelphia Inquirer. All right, Angela, interestingly, an abortion proposal in Pennsylvania, in the Pennsylvania House, took up a lot of time and attention. Right. It was, in a sense, was this unexpected before we get into the details of it?
There are some cynics who believe that it came up, the timing is suspect, it comes up right before the primary elections. Okay. It is a hot button issue. Abortion is a hot button issue in many constituencies across the state.
Absolutely.
The bill itself is championed by the House Speaker, Mike Turzai, and it would ban abortions when there is a diagnosis or even a belief of Down syndrome in the fetus. And the bill moved very swiftly and moved without a public hearing with testimony from, doctors and counselors and other stakeholders.
Things that you would normally expect when you have a major piece of legislation. John, take it.
No, and Angela's right. I mean, this sort of signals the political nature of this. It was an unserious attempt and fairly nakedly political without any testimony from physicians or disability rights advocates. And it was spun, Terry, as a disability rights bill, as a defense of children and people with Down syndrome. Rather tellingly, though, during House debate on Wednesday, Democratic amendments that would have actually helped disabled kids and their families were batted aside fairly systematically, kind of underlining the reality that this has little to do with disability rights and is, in fact, just another attempt at an abortion ban bill. And this comes about 4 or 5 months after the House went through a similar exercise with a 20-week abortion ban that was vetoed by Governor Tom Wolf.
Now, Governor Wolf is given what we know about his positions, particularly coming up in an election year, is it likely to go anywhere?
No. First off, we should note that there hasn't been a final vote in the House that is expected next week. Second of all, it would have to go to the Senate after that, and there's no commitment there. And if it goes to Governor Wolf, he opposes it. He's been clear about that.
All right, John, as we've seen in Washington as well as in Harrisburg, a continuing debate over gun control. Pennsylvania typically has not been an easy state to limit gun, to have gun control. It's a big outdoor state, hunters, people who go to gun shows and firing ranges and do that. But it did come up, and there are a multitude of proposals in the legislature. Talk about what are some of the more prominent ones?
As we sit here, the House Judiciary Committee is sort of wrapping up a week of hearings on various and sundry gun safety and school safety proposals. And again, it's kind of telling that we are in a very political season where Pennsylvania, like other states, is feeling the sort of post-Parkland, post-March for Our Lives fallout. Whether these bills that have received an airing in the Judiciary Committee receive a vote is a separate matter entirely. What is interesting, though, Terry, is a couple of weeks ago, the state Senate unanimously passed a bill that would require people who are convicted of domestic violence or subject to protection from abuse orders to more speedily surrender their weapons.
Got it.
That, in a state like Pennsylvania, is almost sort of like an order of magnitude moving forward.
Big time,
so who knows what might actually happen with these bills coming out of judiciary.
But what about one of the things that there might be consensus on, even among pro-gun folks, would be, background checks, tightening them up, gun shows on the internet. And
the private sales of long guns is another issue that has come up before the committee. It's very unclear at this point whether that has the support at this point in time to go forward. I know that there are also a couple of school safety specific bills that are going forward, or at least being discussed. But again, Pennsylvania has been a very difficult state historically to get these types of gun control measures.
And look, one of the things that seems out of the question is arming teachers right now. I mean, I guess teachers' organizations are not in favor of it, whether they're in management or it's not talking about having more security, John.
Yeah, I mean, they've talked sort of broadly about hardening schools, that is, making them more difficult for people to access, controlling entry points, that kind of thing. I was sitting with State Senator Mike Regan yesterday from Cumberland County, a former U.S. Marshal, who himself voiced misgivings about trying to arm teachers. Yeah. And this is a guy who's about as pro-gun rights as you can possibly get.
Okay. We're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to continue this discussion. And then you're on Facebook, I'm on Facebook. I mean, we just have to spend a couple of minutes on that, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, I'm chatting with John Micek and Angela Couloumbis, reporters who cover Pennsylvania politics and government. All right, Angela, is there any possibility that any of these measures, and these hearings have gone on, I mean, that are likely to get to the governor's desk to pass the legislature?
I think the one that John mentioned earlier that has to do with tightening the period for guns to be turned over in PFA cases, that is one that seems to have broader support than others. Right. But again, generally speaking, these types of bills in the Pennsylvania legislature, at least historically, have had a really tough climb.
Yeah, John, I mean, I can't, background checks, why isn't that something that can be done?
Well, you always get hit with the we need to enforce existing laws excuse.
Well, sure.
And the other thing conversely is, well, background checks wouldn't have stopped X, tighter gun laws wouldn't have stopped this. And that is invariably the barrier that he's run up against. I think Angela's right, though. I mean, that PFA bill came out of the Senate on a 50-0 vote. It's going to be very hard for the House to say no to that.
I would think so, 50-0.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
The legislature, when does it ever do anything unanimously in either chamber,
exactly.
Right? All right, before if we get into some time, I do want to talk about Zuckerberg, but this never-ending debate over redistricting that goes on. Controversially, the Supreme Court of the state issued a map, and let's be candid about it. The map certainly will help the Democrats pick up, it looks like, 3 seats down in the Southeast, talking about congressional seats here, maybe with a chance to pick up a couple of more. And everybody, not everybody, but lots of lawmakers are, well, we got to get an independent commission, whatever that means. So give us a quick update on that.
I think fundamentally the issue boils down to control and who has it. And the legislature was stung by the Supreme Court's decision in recent months to do the map, and has made some movements in the last few days to try to maintain control, even though there is a very large public push to move the drawing of these congressional maps out of the political realm into a commission of independent civilians.
But John, look, if you have, let's say that there's a commission, pick a number of people on it, let's say 15 for the sake of the argument, and legislative leaders pick, in both parties pick 6 and 6, and there are a handful of private citizens on, is there any way to get rid of partisan influence at all?
Well, I mean, that is,
I'm a little cynical.
This is an inherently political process. Let's not forget that. The drawing of legislative lines and congressional lines is an inherently political process. To the extent that you can remove direct control by legislative leaders, which is what has been the case so far, that is a good thing. Will they be appointed by people? Will that be a political process? Undoubtedly. But to the extent that you can establish some kind of independence, that's another matter. But again, this is a constitutional amendment. This is a very lengthy process.
2 sessions of the legislature,
and a referendum vote. You're talking about multiple hoops, and not a lot of will.
That's why there is a push to do it now, because if you want to do it before the next census, you have to actually move this year.
Well, what's strange about this is that in 2020, we'll have another congressional election using the current boundaries for the 18 districts in the state. We're going to lose a seat, by the way, so we'll go to 17 lawmakers instead of 18. And then the maps have to be redrawn all over again. And if it doesn't change, the legislature presumably would do it, and it would end up being appealed into the courts, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the way these things go. These maps are usually litigated because somebody's unhappy with it.
All right, before I let you go, I have to bring up Facebook. And both of you are on Facebook, right? And I'm on Facebook. Are you unduly, and Zuckerberg, I thought parts of his testimony were good and parts of it you had to go, did he really just say that? But, be that as it may, well, what's your sense? Is this unduly worry you? Now, you're a public figure, so...
Yes, I try to be very judicious about who has access to my Facebook page, but yes, I mean, the idea that my information now is publicly available is troubling, and supposedly we're going to get a notification at some point, but when that is going to happen. The question I think most people need to ask themselves is this enough to get off of social media?
That's a great question. I'm thinking about getting off of Facebook,
I've translated all of my personal data into Russian just to cut out the middleman. But for another job that I have, I actually sat watching that Zuckerberg hearing for the best part of the day on Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, I watched part of it.
And what was really striking to me was listening to the questions from the senators, most of whom, frankly, are old enough to be Zucker's grandfather. And most of them were, and the lack of sort of baseline understanding that they demonstrate about what Facebook does and what social media does suggests to me that they lack sort of the sufficient wherewithal to regulate it to begin with, and whether or not Zuckerberg himself will cooperate in any effort to regulate, which they've pushed back hard against as an industry, is another is also a separate issue.
But he did indicate some, that they were going to look at.
He said that he would look at the right kind of regulation. That's a very open debate.
Great update on the big stories of the week. All right, when we come back, Gene Barr comes on. Interesting. Russia, energy, and Pennsylvania. You're going to want to catch this, and we'll do this after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, Gene Barr is sitting across from me. He's the CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. And you were gone the last time we did the business panel.
I was gone. I wasn't in Russia, I promise.
Where were you?
Russia.
You don't have to tell. You were doing, you were on a.
We're on the road a lot, yeah.
I said we were going to get you back.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, this is something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I combined it. Russia, energy, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'd even take it broader. It's Russia, energy, Pennsylvania, and the U.S. Because, look, a lot of the news is focused on what the Russians have allegedly tried to do or done in our elections, et cetera, through Facebook, driving news. There's substantial information that indicates that Russia has been involved in trying to sabotage energy development efforts here in the U.S., which makes perfect sense. If you buy that they'll try and engage in an election, why wouldn't they do something that would more immediately benefit them?
On the economy.
On the economy. They need to sell their natural gas into Western Europe. It has tremendous geopolitical implications. And just a few weeks ago, in fact, a French-flagged tanker sailed into Boston Harbor carrying Russian natural gas because we can't build our infrastructure here in the U.S. to fully develop our resources. We've had people as diverse as Hillary Clinton, the U.S. House of Representatives with a report. Numerous other people have shown pretty good evidence in terms of Russian engagement and disinformation, seeding international environmental groups to try and push back against U.S. development of our resources. It's a pretty serious issue.
So what you're saying is that they're involved in efforts to curtail our energy production.
Sure. They don't want us shipping natural gas over to Europe. They don't want us developing our crude oil because it's a detriment to them. They need this, and they need to exert that upper hand over Western Europe. You've seen what's happened in Ukraine and the Crimea. A lot of that is related to their ability to send natural gas in.
Yeah. And this is all about sales in the international marketplace?
Absolutely. It's sales in the international market and trying to stop our development. If you can block our infrastructure, if you can ban fracking, et cetera, it's going to be to their advantage.
I get that. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are, I mean, I'm hearing this, you and I are chatting.
It's relatively new. It's been out there a little while, but it is shown, and there's pretty good evidence to indicate that. If you talk to people in the intelligence community, they will kind of, we've seen it for a while. We absolutely buy that Vladimir Putin would do this. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, given what's going on, I mean, we're not even going to touch Syria. We'll let other people do that, but what a quagmire potentially that is for us and bringing our two nations into conflict. I don't know why that would surprise anyone, that they're involved in trying to, quote, sabotage our energy.
It makes perfect sense.
Particularly on the economy. And they don't have the same kind of consumer input. They don't have the same kind of...
Not in a totalitarian state. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that at all. All right. We never use bill numbers in this program. I avoid them.
I forget them too easily.
But I have to bring up Senate Bill. Is it 936?
936 is one we're working on.
All right. Yes. And it has to do with pharmacies?
Well, it has to do, to a certain degree, but this would create what's called a drug formulary in workers' compensation. There are drug formularies in Medicare, Medicaid, Children's Health Insurance Program.
What's a formulary?
We're going to get to that part. As well as your own individual coverage. What it says is your physician knows, okay, if I prescribe any one of these for this particular injury or illness, it's going to be covered. There's no question. This way you're not, gee, I wonder if the insurance company will cover it.
All right, let's stop.
They're standard.
Let's stop.
Yes.
So let's say that I have a prescription drug for blood pressure medication. It's automatically covered, end of quote.
As long as it's on the formulary period, it's covered.
It's a list. That's a list of drugs that are covered.
Just make sure that these are appropriate drugs, they're covered, they're FDA approved, all of that. So we're trying to extend that to the workers' comp program, because what we're finding is Pennsylvania has a very high incidence of opioid addiction among injured workers, unfortunately, among the highest in the U.S. In addition to that, there was a story in the Philadelphia Inquirer, a series of stories that talked about a workers' comp law firm that bought their own pharmacy and was doing this thing called compound creams by this referral through doctors, and then the doctors would send them back. You would take 2 compound creams that together were worth maybe $30, mix them together, create a brand new product, and charge $4,000 for it.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's non-FDA approved. So we're trying to push that through. The Senate has passed it. We've so far been stymied in the House. We had 198-98 vote. It's up for reconsideration. Unfortunately, we didn't get a single member of the House Democrat caucus who has voted for this, who has agreed to vote for it. It's incredible. Ohio has done it and has cut the rate of opioid-addicted workers by more than 50%.
So you get a list of drugs, they would be automatically covered.
Absolutely.
And if you go beyond that, then there's
an appeal process that L&I sets up, not the insurance company. L&I sets up.
So state government sets it up, in other words.
Hospital Association of PA supports it. Treatment professionals support it. PA Pharmacists Association, 74 local chambers of commerce, along with local government groups, all support this. You've had governors as interesting as Governor Jerry Brown of California and Andrew Cuomo in New York who have pushed drug formularies. Unfortunately, we're trying to get it through here. We think it would have, if we truly do have an opioid crisis in this Commonwealth, we need to do everything that's reasonable and responsible to get it done.
Has Governor Wolf indicated what he would do?
He does not support it at this point.
He does not support it. Does he have a reason?
I'm not exactly sure. All we're told is that he hasn't said he'd veto it. He says he doesn't support the bill, and that's a critical distinction.
Okay. All right. We're going to run to a break. We'll keep you surprised about what we're going to talk about with Gene Barr next.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. I'm chatting with Gene Barr from the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and I know we haven't talked about this, and your eyes might start to glaze over when we talk about the state budget. I must tell you, you and I have chatted about this over the years, controversy, one after another. It's a yawner right now. And I mean, it's important. We're not, am I right or wrong?
I think so much has swept the budget off the page. Now, granted, we're still a couple months out, but I think it almost seems like so much with redistricting and everything else has kind of swept the budget off of the front page. But it's coming back. They have to pass one by June 30, so we know we got to do that. Everyone believes this is going to be an easier year compared to the last few, and I think that's right. The only tax that's been kicked around has been another tax on the natural gas industry, which of course is a real problem for us. We do see that as a broad-based tax because it would implement another tax on top of the impact tax. But not likely to go anywhere. I don't think that it will. I mean, the Senate did one last year. I don't see that coming through again. The House has not shown receptivity to it. They've shown they can't get 102. Certainly there's some people there who want that. Right. I just don't see that happening this year. Revenues are running decently this year. There's a boost from the federal tax reform. Right. And I just don't know that we're going to have a real bad one this year. I think it's going to be done pretty much close to time. And it looks like education will be the beneficiary of a modest increase. Certainly basic ed, not so much higher ed. Yeah, that's what the governor wants to do. You know, we've already started to hear some of the old, we're fine with having a discussion about what we need to spend it at. Let's not bring out the old myth that public education was cut $1 billion a few years ago. It wasn't. It all had to do with federal stimulus money. So let's lay that aside and have a proper discussion about where we ought to be funding education. Well, there was an increase in the budget in last year, a pretty big increase for education, and that seems to be the... Correct. And that's been a really big focal point for the governor. Would you agree? Has been certainly both pre-K as well as basic ed. And of course, what's been complicating things continues to be paying off the pension, which is now about 15% of the general fund budget in this Commonwealth. So that's still a significant problem. Right. Tremendous problem. But I agree that the last thing lawmakers want, and I think you would agree, you follow politics carefully. I mean, we are in a crazy political environment. That's the only word that, with, lawmakers facing serious opponents in a year that definitely favors the Democrats, just as, 2014, 2010 favored the Republicans. This favors the Democrats, and Republicans control the legislature. They want to get out of Dodge about as quickly as they can with nothing controversial in it. And look, am I right? You're the political historian from a national level, and you know that the party in the out year. So you wonder how much down ballot as we begin with U.S. Senate. We have a race here, the congressional races, and that has been absolute controversy and chaos for months. And don't forget, we have a governor up for re-election. We have a governor up. I was getting to that one, too. Yeah. We have that, and then, of course, we have the entire House and half the Senate. So there's a lot going on this year politically. I'm going to let you go. And we didn't even get to talk about the controversial commercials the Republican candidates for governor. That would take the whole program, but wild. Hey, as always, thanks. The panel, we'll get the panel back, and you'll be on your usual spot. Good. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.